Hi, everyone. My name is Suzanne Hugh. I am the founder and educational director for cleanearthforkids.org, a nonprofit. I'm proud to be here with our fabulous youth board and our guests. So I'd like to introduce Janice. Janice?
Hi, everyone. I am Janice from cleanearthforkids.org's youth board, and I'm here to welcome you to cleanearthforkids.org. At Clean Up for Kids, we have 6 teams. Team 1 is climate action plans for renewable energy and sustainability. Team 2 is trees, gardens, wildlife, and public lands. Team 3 is air pollution, no idling, and transportation. Team 4 is water and no fracking. Team 5 is no pesticides and toxic chemicals and synthetic turf. And Team 6 is plastics and pollution and zero waste. We offer community service in so many ways. If you are a student taking notes tonight, remember you need 2 pages of notes and a short summary. There's more information on our website at cleanearthforkids.org. We also have many K-12 contests in art, music, writing, and STEM. Remember to enter your sign of no idling, and we also have various challenges that you can do. I'll now pass the screen to Darren.
Thank you, Denise. The title of tonight's panel discussion is Rollbacks Part 9, Endangered Species. We're also talking about big cat corridors and biodiversity with Land and Culture International and eco-artist Ashley Mazanec. Okay, so the first thing that we're talking about is the Endangered Species Act. This primarily protects biodiversity in the USA. It was passed in 1973. Its aim as part of protecting biodiversity is to prevent extinction and recover species so they no longer need protection. It covers over 20,000 native plant and animal species and over 100,000 native insect species and their ecosystems. In the US, there are 2,697 endangered species. According to the US Fish and Wildlife Service, endangered is basically categorized as a species that is endangered of extinction throughout all or a significant portion of its range. Endangered species include flowering and non-flowering plants, invertebrate and invertebrate animals. So here's the map, or the next slide. There will be a map of the endangered species in the United States. As you can tell, there's a legend at the bottom. So red is, there's a lot of endangered species that live in that area, and then white or light blue is barely any. So you can see we live in a very concentrated area for endangered species, and that kind of coincides with our pesticide use, but I'll talk about that later. You can use a similar map from the Fish and Wildlife Service to find out what animals in your area are endangered. I'll put the link in the chat, and basically you just click on your state and it'll tell you, it'll have a homepage and it'll list some of the featured endangered species. Judith, could you please show us a picture of an endangered animal from the United States that you have drawn?
Darren, here is a picture of one endangered animal that is known to be the largest animal to have lived on Earth, the blue whale. One reason blue whales are endangered is because when they are resting
So it seems like we've lost Judith there for a moment. So sorry about that technical difficulty. So Judith, your art is so appreciated. Can you, Judith, if you can hear me, can you give us a little bit of information? Can you start again about, I'm going to talk about the whales.
Okay. So yeah, here's a picture of one endangered animal that is known to be the largest animal to have lived on Earth, the blue whale. One reason blue whales are endangered is because when they are resting near the surface of the ocean or are eating, there would be a chance where they are hit by a boat. So we should slow down the ship speed to prevent hitting the whales. Also, by slowing down a gas engine, we reduce air pollution emissions, such as nitrogen oxide, the main ingredient in smog. Another reason blue whales are endangered is because they get trapped in fishing lines and fishing gear. So when they swim long distances, they would get really tired and get seriously hurt. So we need to be more careful and keep a sharp lookout for whales.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you. Darren, were you going to share something about something else, another animal that is endangered?
Yes, I have a few. So first is the Chinook salmon, which I think the name is based off of a name that the Native Americans gave it because it's a big source of their food. I guess it still is. It's found in our state of California, and there are several other states where it's also found. And these salmon are endangered because of contaminated runoff from agriculture with pesticides, or also like other plants that are treated and also watered. And then this runoff comes into their streams and severely affects population. There are also 4 species of bumblebees that are either threatened or endangered, according to the FWS. The rusty-patched bumblebee and Franklin's bumblebee are some examples. And as we talked about in these webinars, neonicotinoids are killing off these populations. There are many other species, including plants, birds, and sea life that perish or die from eating pesticides. Instead of synthetic or man-made pesticides that kill wildlife and microbes in the soil, we should look to natural ways to get rid of these pests. Some things that we could do are regenerative farming, crop rotation or crop diversification, and introducing beneficial species.
Great.
Okay, thank you, Darren. So I'm going to briefly talk about the Endangered Species Act, which was just briefly mentioned by Darren earlier. So to begin with, the Endangered Species Act is administered by 2 federal agencies. The first being the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, which is run by the Department of Interior, and then the second being the National Marine Fisheries Service, which is run by the Department of Commerce. So sadly, we have heard of 3 rollbacks regarding the Endangered Species Act. First being the revision of the regulations for the listing species and designating critical habitat. The second being the revision of the regulations for prohibitions to threaten wildlife and plants. And the third being the revision of regulations for interagency cooperation. So I'll go briefly into detail a little bit more about what each of these rollbacks means, or rollbacks also mean the undoing of environmental protections. So the first rollback is a new regulation that adds economic and other impacts into the process of listing, delisting, and reclassifying species. So in this sense, if a certain animal does not seemingly have an economic impact, it might not be listed as an endangered species anymore, which is terrible to hear because obviously each animal does have a purpose, and it all comes back into a collective economy from our wildlife. The second being before this new regulation, all protections were enforced as soon as species were listed. However, now it requires a case-by-case decision of what protections to enforce. So now it's lowering the amount of protections it might gain, and also it's a whole new process about what protections are going to be implemented or what protections won't be implemented. The third being a new regulation that outlines situations when other federal agencies do not need to consult these 2 industries to ensure that they do not jeopardize the continued existence of a threatened or endangered species. So these rollbacks are terrible, and they are going back this, I guess, act that serves to protect all these endangered species that we've seen on this map Darren just showed us. So it's really important that we discuss these rollbacks and learn what we can do about them to make sure these endangered species are protected. So some things that some states are doing is 17 states are suing the Department of Interior over loss of protection. These include California, Massachusetts, Maryland, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Michigan, Nevada. The list goes on. So, it's particularly 3 lawsuits were filed to stop these new changes. So the first was being in August 2019. A lawsuit was filed by 8 environmental groups led by Earth Justice and the Center for Biological Diversity. The second being in September of 2019, which followed the previous one, which was a lawsuit filed by these 17 states, including the District of Columbia, and it was led by California and Massachusetts. And the third being October 2019, which was a lawsuit filed by the Animal Legal Defense Fund. So fortunately, as of May 18th, 2020, the U.S. District Court dismissed the two lawsuits by the environmental groups. They stated that these groups had a lack of standing and that they did not show how they were affected by these new rules directly. They also ruled that the lawsuit, however, they ruled that the lawsuit from the states, these 17 states, can continue, denying the administration's request to dismiss the case. So the court read that the states described in detail how they are harmed by the new rules. So we see this kind of this contrast between smaller groups versus larger, a bunch of states going in these lawsuits. So it's critical to remember that sometimes if it's just one environmental group, they can easily be taken down, but it's as significant as 17 states working together to protect this, these rollbacks, that can be significant and it's not as easily taken down. Another thing, as Juice mentioned, the Endangered Species Act is important because it protects threatened and endangered species and their habitats. They also prevent them from extinction at our most at-risk plants and animals, and increases their numbers so that they can be removed from the endangered list. And it also protects biodiversity, which the U.S. has over 20,000 native plants and animals and over 100,000 insect species, and it protects our nation's wildlife treasures. And biodiversity is so important for our environment. So on our website, you will see the Harvard trackers. This is very helpful as what is happening. They list what rollbacks are occurring in regards to the Endangered Species Act and other acts that will directly impact these endangered species, such as infrastructure, drilling, and so forth. Also see the Columbia tracker, which is also on our website at cleanforkids.org. And shout out to the Sabine Center at Columbia Law School and our friend Hillary. Thank you for all you guys do, and we're really excited to work with you all. And in regards to rollbacks that we just mentioned, Clean is looking to do a challenge, sort of a rollback challenge. So if you're hired to stand up to these rollbacks or the loss of protections, environmental protections, especially, I'm so sorry, please create art, music, or a video clip and share it to us at call it out at cleanforkids.org or on any social media platform you see.
Great. I'm so excited to see all the great entries for the Call It Out Challenge. That will be so great. We already have so many people who have sent in things for our contests and challenges, so we're excited about that. So you can see the SDGs up here. So let's see. So Darren, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the endangered species? I'm so sorry, the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, so far we've just been talking about the United States, but as you may know, the Sustainable Development Goals are from the United Nations, so it's going to be talking about the rest of the world now, expanding our horizons. So the focus on Latin America. The United Nations recognizes the need to protect animals and their habitats, ecosystems, and biodiversity, and it's shown through these 17 goals. So we're going to be talking about 13 and 14 right now.
Great.
Okay, so I'll briefly describe number 13, which is climate action, which is it's related to endangered species as it directly impacts their homes, such as increased extreme weather changes can cause disasters like wildfires and hurricanes, and increased sea level change, which threatens the homes of many animals such as polar bears or koalas, for example. So it's important to see the interconnectedness between climate action and as well as habitats for these endangered species.
And then the goal of 14 is life below water. So as you know, that's like sea life. Its main goal is to conserve this and conserve and protect the oceans, seas, and marine resources, and hopefully create sustainable development around this. This is important when we consider things like tragedy of the commons. That's basically when people take more than they need because they think that other people will compensate, but it ends up like things like overfishing, which can put species at risk of extinction and endangerment in terms of population size. Conserving these water sources also helps us save the homes of many precious marine animals at the risk of endangerment. So not only is this, we can swim in the water, we can drink the water, but there are animals that live in the water that will be protected, hopefully, when this goal is achieved. And then 15 is to protect, restore, and promote sustainable use of terrestrial ecosystem sustainably manage forests to combat desertification and halt and reverse land degradation and halt biodiversity loss.
And this one's really important when we consider, when we protect our forests and we combat things like desertification, we protect, again, the habitats of many endangered species, as well as, you know, just our lands overall. And so, Judith, you wanted to talk a little bit about some art you've been doing in regards to biodiversity. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. Here is my drawing of a toucan that lives in the rainforests of South America. The toucan is endangered because of deforestation, habitat loss, and human involvement. As the rainforests are being cut down to make way for roads, farms, and buildings, the animals lose their homes. Deforestation destroys their habitats. Toucans are especially endangered because they live on the borders of rainforests.
So I think we lost Judith there for a minute, but isn't she just an amazing artist working so hard to bring awareness? Judith, we lost you for a minute. Can you tell us a little bit? You told us where the toucan lived. So can you give us a little bit more information about the toucan? That would be great.
The toucan is endangered because of deforestation, habitat loss, and human involvement. As the rainforests are being cut down to make way for roads, farms, and buildings, the animals lose their homes. Deforestation destroys their habitats. Toucans are especially endangered because they live on the borders of rainforests. By human involvement, I mean poaching. Poaching is the illegal hunting or capturing of wild animals. Due to poaching, wild animals are sold in the pet trade.
Yes, that is so unfortunate. Absolutely. So there you go. So Leanna, would you like to introduce our guest?
Yes, so I have the pleasure of introducing Dana Kaasik from Nature and Culture International. And I just want to thank you, Dana, for being with us tonight and sharing all the wonderful information you're about to share. So if you would like to, go ahead.
Great, thank you so much, Leanna. I'm going to share my screen here with y'all. Let's see, can you guys see my slides?
Yep.
Wonderful. So I have the pleasure of talking to you all today about some efforts to save our planet's biodiversity. And this issue is very important to me personally. I grew up in Ecuador in Latin America and had lots of opportunities to encounter just the amazing wildlife that there is there and developed a passion, a love for it. And so I'm really grateful for the opportunity that I have now to help support people who are protecting these wildlife. And I'm really excited to talk with you guys today and hopefully share a little bit of that passion for the amazing diversity of life that exists on Earth with you all today. So what is biodiversity? You guys are all really smart folks, so you probably already know this. But
So Dana, I'm
biodiversity,
going to just
sure.
I'm just going to hop in. Thank you so much for being here. I just wanted to let you know that we are so happy that that you're here. We don't see your slides.
Oh.
Just to say, we see you, but we don't see your slides.
Right.
So we were excited to learn about your connection to South America. We're excited
Thanks
about
for jumping in there.
Sure, you got it. Okay.
All right, now you guys see it?
Yes.
Awesome. It looks strange to me. I've given Zoom presentations before. I'm like, okay, maybe this is format set up a little different. All right. So yes, so here is me in Ecuador and having some close encounters with some of the amazing wildlife there. So as I was saying, biodiversity or biological diversity, basically what it is talking about is the number of species in a given area. So not how many, the quantity of a few species, but how many different species. So if you imagine like an acre of land, if there was 1 billion animals on that, but only 2 species, that's not a high amount of biodiversity. Biodiversity is really getting at the number of species in a particular area. And so when we look at our planet, biodiversity is not the same everywhere. This map here shows places where it's like a heat map, where the cooler areas are areas where there's less biodiversity. So these dark blue areas are pretty much all desert areas. And then as you get to the warmer, hotter tones, those are areas where there's a high concentration, a lot of species in a given area. So you can see in Central Africa and Southeast Asia, and especially Indonesia. But then over here in Latin America, you see it is red hot. And that is the reason why my organization that I have the pleasure for working for, it works specifically in nature to protect nature in Latin America, because this is really where you have the biggest impact for saving the largest number of species. And so, as I said, that's why we're in Latin America. The best estimates, there aren't really great estimates, but there'll be a lot of estimates out there, but we feel like the one we're most comfortable with is that 40% of the world's species reside here. And I think that's just referencing Latin America, not Central America, which also has a lot of species. It holds 31% of the planet's fresh water and has half of our planet's remaining tropical forest. So it's a very, very important area. And if you look a little closer, you'll see this area right here is a deep, deep red. And they're going to talk briefly about why that is next. This area is called the Tropical Andes ecoregion, and it is super special. It is considered to be one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. Many people argue that it is because you just have so many species found in these areas that are found no place else on Earth. And there are 2 really big reasons why this area has such a lot of biodiversity. The first is mountains, and the second is water. In both cases, mountains and water can split a population of species up. And so over time, it can lead to differentiation of species to where they become their own thing. And so you see that a lot. I've got some sort of autoplay. Let's see if I can get out of this. Well, we'll see how this goes. But that's the reason why this area has so much biodiversity. And when you're there, you can't help but feel the diversity all around you. It's something that kind of gets in your skin, in your breath. You can feel just the amount of wildlife in here. And I was just reading today that it's estimated that in about 3 acres of Amazon rainforest, there's over 1 billion species. So a lot of different wildlife happening there. And to give you another reference point, so here we have the size of Ecuador kind of compared to the United States. And so relatively small country has more species than the entire United States combined. And I've heard that just this little corner of Ecuador has more species of birds than the entire United States. So just really talking about just jam-packed with lots and lots of different species. And this was a cool infographic I saw this week that the BBC put out, showing how much you can put on a football or a soccer field, the different numbers of species that you can find. If you envision what a soccer field is, imagine that many different types of species. It's pretty spectacular. So what does biodiversity look like? Biodiversity is a pretty dry term, but it is a beautiful and exciting reality. So I wanted to just introduce you to a few of my friends that make up the extraordinary biodiversity in this part of the world. It's one of my favorites, the capybara. Always has a soft spot in my heart. They have the world's largest otter. I don't know if anyone else are otter lovers out there. They're arguably my favorite animal in the world.
So cute.
And the Amazon river otter is the world's largest otter, and they're pretty awesome. But you just have extraordinary variation of color and size, just extraordinary. And there's new species being found all the time. Just this year, my colleagues have been on expeditions, one that was just before everything locked down, where they believe they found 12 new species, new to science, and are in the process of getting those verified. But that's where it's the best estimates, because there's new species being found here all the time. It's very, very exciting. You gotta love these guys. And squirrel monkey, oh, one of my faves. More types of orchids there. You'll have orchids that will just exist only in one little valley. That's the only place they are, is in one little valley. It's pretty cool. And the blue morpho butterfly. This is one of the most iconic species of the Amazon. There's nothing like seeing it sort of enchanting, floating through the rainforest. And so next, I want to talk, it's very similar to biodiversity. It's an issue very closely connected to it, and that is connectivity. So connectivity is defined as the degree to which a landscape or seascape allows species to move freely and ecological processes to function unimpeded. It's a lot of dry words. It's basically saying that you have an area of habitat. If you have anything that destroys the ability for species to go from one area to another, you've lost connectivity. It's become fragmented. And that is really problematic for biodiversity for a few reasons. Connectivity, it allows for species to interact with one another. And there are many species that have symbiotic relationships. They serve different purposes that complement one another. They need to be able to move about. They also, if you guys probably have all taken biology and learned about how important it is to have genetic variability in a population, that if your amount of genetic information all becomes too similar, too small, even if you have some of those species still alive, they're not really viable. They're more susceptible to disease and different things, that their long-term survival is really at risk when you lose that type of genetic variability. And one thing that we're all now very aware of is losing connectivity also has consequences to humans, that it can cause you for new zoonotic animal related diseases to emerge and outbreaks. So a lot of folks believe that coronavirus is connected to a zoonotic disease, had an animal origin. So all of these things are really clear connectivities, a good thing. We want to keep it as much as possible. And a few species that are good examples of why it's necessary are large predator birds. They can't just exist in a small area. They need to be able to fly, to nest, they're territorial, they need their own little space. And the same thing with guanacos, which are ancestors of the llama. So cute. They need to be able to move about and find new areas to graze and to find different populations to exchange genetic information. And it's very important for your large mammals, which we all love our large mammals. Here we've got the iconic jaguar, and they need large areas of land. You can have a bunch of jaguars in a small space, but they aren't going to be able to survive. They need their own space. They need to be able to have free movement. And a good example of place where we're trying to help a species is the Andean bear, who, so cute. It's also known as the spectacled bear. It's the only bear in Latin America, and they are threatened because of human activity destroying their environment. So one area where they have a habitat is this southern part of Ecuador. And right now there's a proposal for a road to be generated through this corridor that would disrupt the Andean bear. We have another area where they're proposing building a dam, which would flood the only area where the bears can cross from one area to another. And it doesn't bode well for the bears when they don't have this ability to roam. And I would be wrong if I ended my presentation without talking about the people who live in these places. It's not just amazing animal and diversity of animal life and wildlife, there's also an incredible diversity of peoples and cultures in these places. And these peoples have lived for thousands of years in these areas in harmony with nature. And they have done such a good job of living sustainably with their environment that even though indigenous lands account for only 22% of the world's landmass, they house 80% of the world's biodiversity. That's incredible. So these folks, they deserve our thanks, they deserve our support to be able to continue living in the way that they have on their lands. And they are under threat as well. And so we partner, that's where the culture comes in, to Nature and Culture International. We partner and support indigenous peoples to support their conservation goals, because they know the area, they know what's at risk, and they know how to make it better. So we support them in getting titled to their lands so that they have a legal basis for keeping people out from doing destructive practices like mining. And so I just wanted to make sure you all were aware of that and help appreciate the indigenous peoples of our planet, because they are really the guardians of our forests and our greatest allies in conservation of biodiversity. And finally, I want to leave you with this quote from arguably one of the world's greatest, most renowned biologists, E.O. Wilson. He said, "Look closely at nature. Every species is a masterpiece, exquisitely adapted to the particular environment in which it has survived. Who are we to destroy or even diminish biodiversity?" And that's a quote that really sticks with me, thinking of my actions and how it impacts the environment and the world around me. But these are incredible creatures, and we should we should have responsible activities as humans to make sure that we are not only destroying, but not even diminish these incredible creatures. And I think John mentioned earlier that San Diego has the greatest biodiversity here in the United States. So we have a really strong connection and I hope incentive for really thinking about this issue. So thank you guys so much. Really, really appreciate getting to be here.
Thank you so much for all the information and the wonderful presentation. I loved seeing all the different animals and unique species. There were so many cute ones and so many ones I never even knew about. So I just want to thank you again. Just before you leave, is there any way that the audience could get in connections with what you're doing at Nature and Culture International, or is there any way they can get involved or help somehow?
Absolutely. So I think you showed a screenshot of our website, which is the best way to kind of keep up on what's happening. It's natureandculture.org. And you can go on there and you can sign up for our emails. We send out right now, we're sending out a monthly series on the amazing miracles of the Amazon and beyond. And so you can learn more fun facts about these amazing ecosystems.
Thank you so much. I honestly loved your presentation. I will definitely be personally looking into your organization and everything you guys do. I love what you guys stand for and the incorporation of the culture aspect as well, because that is very important.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Dana. So now I would like to introduce an eco-artist with a very impressive background in sustainability and climate action and writing songs and performing music. So I'd like to welcome Ashley Mazanec. Ashley, Judith has our first question for you. So Judith, go ahead.
Please tell us about your goals and inspirations for your eco.
I think I understood what are my goals and inspirations for my eco art. Yeah, so my goal as an organization when I began Eco Arts Foundation is to inspire the regeneration of Earth through art. A lot of people do not respond immediately to scientific information. And so to take it the next step by engaging their emotions or even just the feeling of beauty and enticing them to get involved because it's fun or it's exciting, that inspires me a lot. Also, eco artists have done a lot in our history. The reason we have a national park system is because Thomas Moran and George Catlin had beautiful watercolor images that they took to Congress many years ago, and they showed them how beautiful Yellowstone Park was. And they inspired politicians to then protect these spaces. So it's sort of something that's been going on for a long time. I'm certainly not the first eco artist, but these previous eco artists definitely have inspired me a lot. Can you guys hear me?
Can you please share an eco arts project and tell us what you want people to remember?
Absolutely. So if I may turn on my slide deck, I can actually show you some pictures. Does that work, Suzanne? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and show you my screen here for a second. Share screen. And hopefully this works. Let's see what we got here. Present. Okay, and I can see, give me a thumbs up if you can see what's going on here. Okay, good, perfect. So here is one project that we did recently on endangered species. Now, as you can see, I, on the left, am hugging a South China tiger. And on the right, one of my young second grade students is posing with his South China tiger. And we did this in the style of Frida Kahlo's The Frame. So they got to have a little fun learning about the history of art, and then come around full circle after learning a little bit about environmental policies, the environmental protections here in the United States, and some of the things we can do. And we wrapped it up by making something that will help them to remember what they learned that day. Now, there's many other projects we've done Let's see, if you want to be able to see this, I'm gonna have to, oh, put it down there, perfect. So here we have some ocelots, which are definitely a threatened species, and I think they're definitely endangered in the United States. So we've spent a lot of time talking about different types of wildlife, and so the students walk away a little bit better informed, and then understanding how these different types of animals connect, right? That's what ecology is. Ecology is the connection, the relationship between different organisms, including ourselves as humans, between one another. We create our own ecosystems as humans, but also the relationships between these animals and each other. So here we also have some fish on the right side. These are my young pre-kindergarten students. Kindergarten and first graders made these beautiful fish. Some of them actually used real ocean plastic from various beach cleanups in the area. This one, it was on the human footprint. If you can see, we did some sculptures in the style of Picasso. Picasso is a cubist, and he looks at humans from different perspectives. And so when we calculated our class's collective footprint, we started to think of ourselves not just as people, but as people that use resources, people that pollute the air, that eat things, that have an impact on our environment. So we did spend some time on the Amazon rainforest. I wrote a song for my students, and they sang it with me. And so here you'll see, you know, and in my background, actually behind me speaking, you'll see I used a picture of a bunch of different beautiful Amazon images in a style of a Brazilian artist who focuses on patterns. And we talked about climate change. So on the right side of the screen, you'll see the northern lights. We used warm and cool colors to talk about different things that would warm Earth or cool Earth down. For example, if there's more plants, or if there's less ice reflecting heat back into space, that would make Earth warmer. So they'd walk to the warm side of the room, the hot side of the room, where the warm colors were, to show me that they understand. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there and go ahead and let you ask the next question, because I'm not sure. I'm gonna mention this, I think, a little bit later. Do you have another question? I think you do.
Do you have any other projects, and can you share why it was important and what you hope to teach?
Absolutely, yes. Well, first of all, as was mentioned, biodiversity is extremely important. It shows the health of an ecosystem when you have what's called redundancy, or lots and lots of different animals or organisms doing the same job. One of my goals is to help us to slow down a little bit and think about our actions as people, and to take responsibility. And for everyone, that's going to be different. Some people are going to be excited to get involved with politics, and they're going to want to rally the troops and change the laws. And some people are going to be inspired to adopt a different lifestyle. Maybe they're going to stop using plastic at the store. Maybe they figured out a way that they can buy different types of packaging, or buy less things, or even live in a smaller house, which makes a big difference in terms of the way we impact our environment. So that's at least one of the things I'm trying to achieve here, and certainly inspiration too, because I've done a lot of environmental work, and after a number of years, sometimes you get what's called burnouts, or you get very tired and you feel like you're not moving anywhere, and the earth is so heavy, and carrying it on your shoulders gets tiring. And so it's nice to be able to march to the beat of, you know, a drum that is colorful, maybe fun. Doesn't have to be fun all the time. Sometimes we have to write sad songs. You know, sometimes we need to, you know, use music or art as therapy.
Oh, and lastly, can you please let us know your website so we can learn more?
Absolutely. So one of the thing that's up on the screen right now, during COVID, we had to go digital. And when we went digital, we decided to launch a platform on parachutearts.com. And so if you go to parachutearts.com, which I actually have pulled up here. Yes, here. You will see we have a whole list of art on demand. We have swimming with a sea turtle, We have a short thing about flying bugs and actually some of the endangered insects as well. Our last theme was endangered species. So if you like the endangered tiger drawing that you saw and you want to share it with someone, these are actually free. We normally work in the public school system live and talk to kids and work with kids in person, but because of COVID, we had to put it online. So the good part about that is it's easy to share with you. Of course, we've had to learn how to edit videos, and that's all new to me, but we were more than happy to learn. So one place you can keep track of us is on parachutearts.com. As you can see here, we designed an eco city. I even have my own eco city here. Can you see it with my background? This ended up winning the Oceanside Earth Art Contest, which I was very excited about. Another place you can find me is on Instagram, as well as Facebook and YouTube. So I'm going to start, I just started a YouTube station called Eco Artist in Residence. I haven't published anything yet, but I will be blogging about some of my future adventures. So we have, this is my personal website over here. You certainly can keep track of me, but I've renamed all my personal platforms on Facebook and Instagram to Eco Artist in Residence, and the YouTube channel is there as well.
Okay, I have a question, if you don't mind.
Yes, please.
Speaking of future experiences and adventures, we've heard that you're going to Nicaragua this summer to do regenerative farming. Can you tell us a little bit more about it and its importance?
Absolutely. So I'm going to pull up this slide right here and share it with you. One of the amazing things that we did teach our students this year is about regenerative agriculture. Regenerative agriculture is one of the most important ways that we can protect biodiversity, and we can actually halt and even reverse climate change. So if you don't know, regenerative agriculture, instead of taking all the nutrition and everything from the land, it actually puts nutrition back in the soil. It grows more than one type of food, lots of different types of food all in one place. If you've ever been to a regenerative farm, it feels different. It's actually aesthetically more beautiful. It kind of makes you take a deep breath and go, oh, wow. Of course, there's no pesticides used, no unnatural pesticides. You know, they might have their ways of sort of dealing with an invasive species or an insect or something that's taking crops. In this unit, we talked a little bit about farming in general and all the different types of certifications. Here you see actually rainforest certified. A lot of the students chose to, in the style of Andy Warhol, we did pop art. And we decided to invent our own labels, and some of them use ones that already exist. So I'm going to Nicaragua mainly to be of service, partly to my students and partly to just the world as a whole, because as a teacher, I get the summers off, and I would love to learn more about regenerative agriculture and be able to actually do it consistently every single summer. As often as I can. I did live on a farm in my past in a tiny home, and I got a taste of what that lifestyle is like, and I loved it.
That sounds so interesting. I'm very excited to see where this goes. That's awesome that you get to go there. I have another question for us with Cleaner for Kids. Obviously, we can't go to Nicaragua, but what advice would you have for us going forward regarding regenerative agriculture and also just increasing awareness as a whole?
Yes. Well, first of all, be creative and have fun as often as you possibly can, because your mission is a fairly difficult one. I think people are going to be receptive of you because you're so well put together, you're so organized, you're so friendly. I mean, your message is very positive. But if you can be creative and have fun the whole time, it just has even more pizzazz. People are even more drawn to you. They want to know more about what you are doing. With regard to regenerative agriculture, there's actually a certification coming out soon. A bunch of different organizations like Patagonia and Dr. Bronner's, I think are helping to fund it. But one of many different icons that you see on your food, you might see dolphin safe or fair trade or organic. These all mean things. These all mean very important things. regenerative agriculture encompasses even more important things. So it's sort of a combination of all the things we look for in healthy food that isn't hurting our ecosystems. And so stay tuned for the regenerative food label. And when it comes out, do your best to support regenerative farms. It's one of the best things we can do. That, not wasting food, you know, driving less. There's a lot of things we can do, but we have to eat every day. So it's nice if you know that you're doing as little damage and maybe even the opposite and actually helping to regenerate our planet.
Okay, well, thank you so much for speaking with us. Well, for me personally, I think it's really inspiring because remember as a kid, like, you're always exposed to, like, you know, turn off your water when you're brushing your teeth, and so it wasn't very negative and overwhelming, but it's really important, like, as a kid to just keep this in the back of your head for when you do, like, realize like all of the bad things about it, you do have some positive things under your belt. So I think your work is really inspiring. So thank you for coming on with us. Thank you everyone for being here. We look forward to seeing all of the viewers next week. We are going to sign off, but if you'd like to stay on the call or ask questions or talk to Suzanne or our board, you can do that. Just stay here. And you can also type in the chat if you have questions or comments. So yeah, thank you guys.
I want to thank you guys for all your great work, by the way, before you disappear, especially with getting pesticides out of parks and all the research, getting the CARB grant, working on stopping idling with the exhaust, making your amazing signs. I can't wait to participate in some of your art contests with my students from Delta. Good job.
Thank you so much. So as Darren said, we will close tonight, and we will see everyone next week here Thursday at 5:30. I'm excited about that. And if like to stay on the call, I can promote you to a panelist. And so what that means is that you can be seen and heard. So you can have a conversation. I don't know if Ashley or Dana are available, but if you are, we have a few minutes so you can answer some questions live from some of our participants. And so I will go ahead and I'll ask John for a little bit of help. Could you come over and help me do that? Okay, so he's going to help me promote people to panelists. So I know Ashley will stay on, and so I'm just going to do this real quick. So I have to go to more and actually promote you to panelists. So thank you guys so much. It was just absolutely fabulous